Ben and Tom at Christmas. An affectionate pastiche with my very best wishes to you all for Christmas and the New Year. With the door firmly closed behind him, Will stood for a moment, surveying the scene and letting the muggy warmth of the tavern slowly begin to chase the cold from his feet and his hands. It was the eve of Christmas, and the alehouse was busy, full of locals and travellers alike, all sheltering from the cold and seeking out some company. He removed his hat and his cloak with a shake, stamped his feet to clear them of all the settled snow, and began to move slowly through the room. Most of the revellers were in tight-knit groups, deep into drinking and conversation. A few of them spotted him as he made his way past and waved or nodded at him, gestures that he returned with a smile and a good evening or a Merry Christmas wish. The glover, who he knew from his former trade, the carpenter's apprentice, who had often been at the theatre, and what was he doing, drinking with a grizzled army veteran and his companion? For a moment Will wondered if he should rescue the boy before he was conned into some three-card trick and lost all his money, or worse, but resolved for the moment merely to keep an eye on things. Such things were a rite of passage for a young man, after all. A wool merchant from Warwickshire waved frantically at him, indicating that he should come over and join the circle of aliens to London, now trapped in the city for the night, if not the season, but he was feeling melancholy enough without hearing more tales from home. His broken promise to Anne to return to Stratford for the Christmas season played on his conscience more than she would ever realise, and it was genuinely the demands of the playhouse and the court that kept him in London, but still, he could only hope that, in the end, she would understand that they would have years together once he'd done with all of this. So he passed them by, with a word to assure the visitors that he would return later. It was a promise that he knew in his heart he would not keep. He was enough of a regular in this place for it not to be the first time that the mistress of the tavern would lead him quietly out of the back door when he needed to slip away, which was a move that, however necessary, had its own dangers. As she guided him out the back when the need arose and past the stairs that led up to her living quarters above the tavern, she would often pause, as if inviting him to a place of comforts that he chose only to imagine. His marriage vows may have been made in haste and a long time ago, but he was in no mood to break them. However, the woman was useful, kindly, quite charming and witty, and he did enjoy her company, as long as it was in the company of others. Speaking of whom, he could see his flagon was already being filled by her fair hand, as she wheeled a large jug of ale with extraordinary strength and dexterity, and not a drop spilt. At the counter, he lifted the flagon and took a long drink, noting, but not really minding, that she was watering the beer even more than usual. Perhaps the cold had delayed the brew and stocks were running low. The thought was meant to be a kindly one, but only once again left him wondering how Anne was getting on with her brewing in Stratford, guaranteed to be even colder than London at this time of year. "Doth he hearken?" he asked, forcing a smile that he hoped wouldn't be misinterpreted. No, she was too busy to be distracted. She just nodded to the dark corner of the room, mentally chalked up the drink onto his tab, and moved on to her next customer. In that furthest corner of the tavern, where the light was at its dimmest and the chatter of the patrons was at its least intrusive, Will could see the solid bulk of his friend relaxed into the high-backed chair that always reminded Will most inappropriately of a chorister's stall. This was no angelic boy, though. With a long pipe hanging from his lips and a drink in his hand, Ben Jonson was very much more of the earth than the heavens. He opened one eye lazily. "Will," he drawled, "what hath detained you?" "Rehearsals with the players," said William with a sigh, as he dropped his hat and cloak onto the chair and set his flagon on the table. "Tribulations?" queried Ben, before taking a long draw from his own goblet of wine. "We are called to the court for 3 performances at Christmas-tide. Condell frets about the schedule until he could his own eyes pluck out, and thou knowest how Hemmings doth hate the wherry in the winter. He doth ever pray in fear of drowning at the summit of his voice for the span of the voyage. God mercy on any souls travelling with us on that day, for he doth strike fear into the heart. In truth, I'll warrant it, 'tis a fearful journey in the dark and snow. Good luck to you." "And," Will added as he drank, "God bless Her Majesty. May she live long." Johnson just grunted, but joined him in the toast nevertheless. "'Tis the toil of our triumphs, Ben. We must entertain when we are asked." "If we are asked." William wearily raised his drink again. "Thy hour will arrive, Ben, if perchance thou canst cease thy vexation of others." A man of thy eloquent skills could strive to wear the guise more of a diplomat than the jester in thy speech. But come on, Ben, let's be happy at this merry time. I'll warrant that within the traversing of another year you will be in the circumference of the court, if you are careful. Be happy now. Look around this place, where every man and woman can meet and make merry. Is it a tavern filled with cheer, or merely another stage of our life's comedy? Johnson smiled, letting his mood lift a little. Will, thou art ever a poet weaving verse in every discourse. But these souls, they wouldst raise the very tempest in the critic's mind. Ay, it would be a tempest of words indeed, each one a critic of the other. We know it well that whatever conjunction of spirits and dreams we create, we cannot please all. Yet should we not be proud? Are we not alchemists who transmute mere words into gold? A jest, no doubt. Yet it is a curious craft that we share, to spin such fables for our merry audiences. But you need not fear harsh words. You are well loved, Will. They await your every word from the Queen to the groundlings. Nay, do not protest, for it is but the truth, and I'll drink to your success. And it is Christmas, a time for revelry, not rivalry. Well said, Ben, to the spirits of mirth and merriment. Let us raise another toast, then, to the Muses. May they ever inspire our quills alike in friendship and in art. To friendship, as steadfast as the northern star, guiding us through these winter nights with warmth and wisdom. Johnson caught the eye of the serving wench as she passed, and their drinks were refilled. Johnson raised a hand to stop her moving on, half-emptied his goblet in a gulp, and indicated that it should be refilled. Will mused that they were in for a long evening, and not unwillingly so, thanks to the midwinter cold. He settled back for more conversation, but Johnson had other ideas. He slammed his goblet down on the table, wine flying everywhere, and said in a loud voice that could penetrate the hubbub of the tavern like no other, "My friends, lend me your ears, for the master of the stage, William Shakespeare, gent, will now regale you with a Christmas song." Shakespeare sank deeper into his chair, shaking his head vigorously. "Not a song, Will? A poem, then, or even a story. Come, something to entertain these good people on the festive eve." A cheer went up around the room, and then the beating of tables as the patrons encouraged the reluctant playwright to entertain them. Will knew he was trapped, and slowly took to his feet, scowling a little at Johnson, but only a little. And once he was up on his feet, he was an actor on stage again, and suddenly nothing mattered but the weaving of the tale. He felt the muse take him, and the familiar feeling of a story taking hold came to him. A Yuletide story. Let me think on it. Yes, I have it. Not a story, but a Yuletide dream. In the heart of Christmastide, when snow dusted the fair land of Avon, King Valeric ruled with a just and benevolent hand. His castle, festooned with holly and ivy, gleamed like a beacon against the wintry night. Yet, as joyous as the season was, a shadow lay upon the king's heart. His only daughter, the sweet Lady Rosalind, was betrothed to Duke Henry, a nobleman from adjacent lands. However, she secretly pined for the humble poet Edmund, whose sonnets of love touched her very soul. As the bells chimed softly in the crisp December air, the regal court gathered for a grand Christmas feast. Musicians played melodies that wove through the night like silken threads, but unbeknownst to the merry guests, a mischievous spirit, frolicsome and quick, descended unto the hall. The sprite, Cupid, ever fond of weaving destinies with threads of unseen magic, sought to entwine the fates of the lady and the poet, whose love shone as bright as the Yule log fire. As the hour grew late, King Valeric called for merriment, a masque that would delight the souls of all the assembled. As the lords and their ladies watched the entertainment, Cupid, invisible to mortal eyes, flitted through the gathering, whispering sleep-inducing words into their ears until all were asleep by the warming hearth. Thus a peculiar spell settled over the castle. In her dreams, the Lady Rosaline found herself wandering in a forest, clad in a cloak of stars. She stumbled upon Edmund, who held a holy wreath, each berry ablaze with a ruby's glow. "For you, my lady," he said, his voice as tender as a winter moon, a vision so vivid that her heart dared to hope. Nearby, in his own slumber, Duke Henry was also visited by a vision, one of honour and bravery, and with a richness of soul, but was that yet unconnected to Rosalind's love. Come morning, as the spirit's charm dissipated, a change fell upon the household. Duke Henry, touched by visions of true love's worth, pledged to seek a bride whose heart resonated with his own. Relieved, he relinquished Rosaline's hand with grace. Upon witnessing this, King Valeric, wise and moved by intangible revelation, called forth the poet, admired for his craft and his forthrightness. "Young Edmund," he said, "if your heart be as true as your verses, then to my Rosaline's felicity I consent." Grinning with both his heart and his eyes, Cupid, the unseen architect of joy, watched as Edmund and Rosaline exchanged vows before the court, bound not by title, but by mercy and love. And thus, in harmony with the spirit of Christmas, King Valeric's castle rang out with laughter and song, and tales of wonder and love for ever remembered, united by dreams spun on that snowy eve. And in every corner of the land, the tale was told of the Christmas enchantment, where love triumphed over the starry sky, twinkling as 1,000 blessings bestowed from on high above. The room was held in rapt silence until a lone voice called out, not Johnson's, but another that Will recognised. "We need a poem, Will, a sonnet for the season." Will shuddered, but then, with a quick prayer to the muses, took up Decker's challenge. Upon this eve of hallowed Christmas night, the stars doth glisten with a celestial gleam, the world adorned in robes of purest white, as gentle dreams arise from silent stream. The hearth is warm, the candles softly glow. In cheer we gather, our hearts entwined as one amidst the holly's dance and mistletoe. A tale of peace and joy is now begun. Fond memories of the olden times we weave, with carols sung in hushed and tender tone. The spirit of goodwill we all receive, as love's eternal light is brightly shone. In festive mirth may hearts for ever bind, and in this joy true solace may we find. The room burst into applause and cheers, giving Will some time to sit down and shrink back into his seat. Johnson raised his goblet to him with a smile, but it soon disappeared when Decker appeared. "Will, Benjamin, a fine entertainment." "My thanks, Thomas. 'Twas but a trifle. You have entertained the folk, 'tis all that matters." "But we strive for higher things," Johnson added quickly, not wanting to be left out of the conversation. "With comedy, aye, well, maybe." Will could sense the tension between the two men. Both had so much in common, their love of the comic and satire, their shared experiences of incarceration, yet their dislike of each other, however unspoken, was mutual and obvious. To try to break the moment, he said, "Now, Ben, 'tis your turn to weave a tale, else we'll lose this crowd." Johnson heaved himself up from his chair without a word and stepped forward, happy to take the centre of this makeshift stage. The revellers hushed again in anticipation. Not 20 leagues from here, in a small village, even now the streets are filled with revellers, singing Christmas songs, sharing food and drink, and giving candles to all, so that every window of every cottage will show a glowing light in the winter darkness. Snow is falling, and all is well, as the melodies of the lute fill the air. But why is this so? Well, many years ago, when our good Queen's father sat on the throne, in this village lived a man named Nicholas Goodfellow. He was warm of heart and generous of spirit. But a common tradesman, Nicholas worked diligently as a chandler, crafting candles that brought light to every home in the village. His reputation for kindness was well deserved, for he never hesitated to lend a hand or share his goods with those in need. One particular Christmas Eve, the villagers had gathered at the great hall of the manor for the annual Yuletide feast. The tables were laden with roasted meats, sweet jellies and spiced ale. Sprigs of holly and ivy adorned the walls, and a great Yule log crackled in the hearth, casting a festive glow across the room. As the evening festivities commenced, a mysterious traveller arrived at the manor entrance. His cloak was tattered, his eyes spoke of a long journey and weary roads. The villagers paused to gaze at the stranger, curious and not a little apprehensive. But, with a gracious smile, Nicholas Goodfellow approached the traveller, extending his hand in welcome. "Join us, friend," he said warmly. "No one should spend Christmas Eve alone." Reluctantly, the traveller accepted, revealing himself to be a wandering poet named Peregrine, seeking solace and inspiration. As the night unfolded, Peregrine regaled the guests with tales of distant lands, of brave soldiers, of chaste ladies, and of worthy lords. He recited verses that captured the spirit of the season, and his words wove magic in the air and enchanted all who listened. In his presence, the villagers were reminded of the truth of Christmas, a time of generosity, fellowship, and the sharing of stories that warmed the heart. Inspired by the poet's tales, they shared their own traditions and folklore, weaving a tapestry of joy and wonder that united them all. As the night grew long, Nicholas presented Peregrine with a gift, a finely crafted candle, a symbol of warmth and light. "May it guide you on your journey and remind you of this night of friendship," he said. Moved by the villagers' kindness, Peregrine vowed to return each year to celebrate with his newfound friends and share new tales of his travels. Thus began a cherished tradition, where stories and songs will fill the halls on each Christmas Eve. And so, in the spirit of fellowship and festive cheer, the village thrived, its people bound by the enduring light of friendship and the magic of shared stories. Even now, if one listens closely on a quiet winter's night, the echoes of laughter and song can still be heard, a testament to a Christmas tale well told. When winter's breath doth cloak the world in white, and stars adorn the stable cloak of night, the bells of Yule do softly chime and sing, announcing joy that only Christmastide can bring. The hearth is warm with glowing embers light, around it gathers cheerful hearts in sight. Roasted feasts and spiced ale on the board, while tales of mirth and cheer are lovingly restored. The air is brisk, the evergreen is crowned, with all that nature's bounty has renowned. Rich holly and ivy weave their tale, bedecking halls where ancient legends pale. Children clasp beneath the mistletoe, their dreams alight with treasures yet to know. The gentle snow unbidden falls to earth, a tranquil sign of winter's pure rebirth. Great revelry doth sound in harmony, echoes of goodwill through each family. Thus, in this holy night may peace abide, with every heart its dwelling satisfied. Mirth and grace within each soul doth bloom, as Christmastide casts shadows from the room. With festive cheer and carols deeply spun, we hymn the universal call of our God's only Son. Ben, methinks you do have a part that is as soft as the coat of a newborn lamb. I drink to thee, said Will with a smile. Ay, added Decker, a most pleasant tale. I am surprised. And he too raised his tankard, which Johnson acknowledged with a nod. Do not think that you will escape this challenge, Thomas. You heard my tale of mysterious lands, and Ben has told us of the countryside. Now you must take us to the city, methinks. Decker gave a rueful smile, and took his turn on his feet. I have not your skill for it, but in the name of Christmas and London I will try. Imagine the city in midwinter, when the Thames winds its way lazily through London, choked with floating ice, chilled to the very essence, just as we are today. We see nothing but a watery sun for but a few hours every day for months. And yet, in the midst of this darkness and cold, comes the light of Christmas, and the fragrant essence of Yuletide merriment. The frost-laden windows of cottages and manors alike sparkle like diamonds in winter's half-light. And in those half-lit streets, where cobblestones echo to the footfalls of both pauper and prince, hang garlands of holly, the crimson berries freckled like the cheeks of a laughing child. The air hums with the calls of jubilant revellers praising the season in harmonious revelry, and with the bells that toll from St. Paul's Cathedral. Amongst the pedlars and the merrymakers there stood Timothy, a young chimney-sweep, garbed in the stained clothes of his trade, and whistling a tune learned on his mother's lap. Though life's hardships did visit Timothy often, this day, the eve of Christmas, was one unto holiness itself, and did lay a cloak of magic across the city that is seldom found in the scrolls of mortal understanding. As he wandered through the bustling thoroughfare, his path not littered by obstacles, but by the merry cheer of bursting souls, Timothy happened upon a most curious sight. A vendor offering mulled cider, the fragrance of cinnamon and cloves a magnetic force against the icy winds. The vendor, a kindly man, with a face carved from wisdom and years, noticed the child's intrigue and offered him a steaming cup. "Bless thee, little master," he greeted, his voice accented by the London brogue. "May thy heart be warmed as ready as thy hands." With gratitude, Timothy accepted, savouring the sweet-spiced warmth that flowed through his being. Soon he chanced upon the market square, where gathered a crowd drawn by the lamplight and the sound of music. Here a troupe of players enacted upon a makeshift stage the story of the Nativity, their voices lifting high the tale of angels and shepherds. Children sat, rapt with wonder, their eyes wide like the moonlit sky. And there, amidst the onlookers, Timothy spotted an elderly woman, frail as December's dawn, shivering beneath a tattered shawl. Compassion ignited within his chest, and without hesitation he unfurled his own modest scarf, wrapping it tenderly around her shoulders. "Peace be with you, kind woman," he whispered, his selfless heart laden with joy. The old dame, grasping the fabric with frail fingers, smiled a smile that would outshine the brightest of stars. "That was a blessed child," she declared, her voice a gentle tremor, "for kindness once given returns under heaven's grace tenfold." And so the eve wore on, with moonlight scattering its silver gift upon London's grandeur. Timothy, carrying the warmth of charity within his heart, knew that though this night might be long and bitter, the joy of Christmas could illuminate the darkest of alleys. Thus the city passed under the loving embrace of the season's spirit, a tapestry of kinship and light, woven by each and every soul that dwelled within the bustling streets of merry old London. "Ha! Even thou art touched by the season, Decker. And thou must grant us a poem too. Both Will and I have played our part." "Benjamin, you know I have not thine skill with the muse to create on the moment. But here is something I did write. It lacks music yet, but thou will hear it in a play yet betimes. It is a pretty thing that I have much liking for." "And 'tis all in your hand?" asked Johnson, knowing that Decker rarely worked alone. "No, by my honesty, it has Chettle and Houghton in it too. They did improve my verse, I'll not deny it." The two men again nodded curtly at each other, enjoying their game. But it was all to Will's discomfort, and he was keen to break the moment. "Then let us hear it, Thomas, for I must leave soon. There are plays to be written, and I feel the call of the quill." "Then I hope this does not make thee too restful, Will, for 'tis a lullaby, with praise for the riches of sleep, and yet how rare that can be." Decker turned back to the drinkers, who had been watching the three playwrights converse with just the same attention that they gave to their performances. Decker took a breath. "Golden slumbers kiss your eyes, smiles awake you when you rise. Sleep, pretty wantons, do not cry, and I will sing a lullaby. Rock them, lullaby. Care is heavy, therefore sleep you. You are care, and care must keep you. Sleep, pretty wantons, do not cry, and I will sing a lullaby. Rock them, lullaby." "Well, Thomas, I congratulate you," Johnson said with a smile. "That maybe will be remembered for many more years than I can conjure into my mind. Now, the night is still young, Will. We will not let you depart. Let us drink some more to the happiness of the season." He raised his goblet to the assembled revellers, who cheered loudly and returned his salute. Will relaxed back into his chair with resolution. The muse would have to wait for another day.